Okay, can you hear me now? Testing.
Oh, yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, cool. All right, then we can start. What did you think of your visit this week?
Loved it. I thought it was really awesome.
I was glad that some of you decided to hang with me. You know, some of you ditched me, but oh well.
I was straight at me, dude. That was direct.
So there are many things that we can talk about in the legislature. We don't always just have to talk about our bill, but I wanted to follow up first and give that the most time. If you have questions you want me to pass along, or if you have wonderings about it, we'll speak about that as much as you wish, and then we can just talk about other things.
Okay. So has the bill been passed yet, or?
No, so Tony, after he met with us, he went and met with the Speaker of the House, which is the most important legislator in that body, Speaker Chop. Speaker Chop was getting cold feet because of lobbying from Elizabeth is one of them, the ACLU, but he renewed his commitment to Real ID. So the next day, Tony went and met with Governor Inslee himself, and Governor Inslee said that he is absolutely on board. So it has not been voted out of committee yet, but we have through Tuesday to get it voted out. There are cutoffs, and there's a fiscal committee cutoff that is on Tuesday. Now, if it doesn't get voted out by Tuesday because it's such an important high priority bill, there are ways to make it declared necessary to implement the budget. It's called NTIB. And basically that means that you waive all of your cutoff dates. But if we're playing by the regular rules and we're not making exceptions, it has to be voted out of the Transportation Committee by Tuesday. And it looks like they'll be able to do that.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Can they vote multiple times?
They don't bring it to a vote unless they know what the outcome of the vote is going to be. So they vote count multiple times, going around and talking to members. But that's why it hasn't been voted on yet, because the outcome was not the outcome that the chair would want. And so they just postpone the official vote. So a lobbyist's job often, if you're working a bill, is to go create vote count lists and go back to that legislator who's the prime sponsor and say, you have this many votes for, this many votes against, so that they are not embarrassed when they bring it to the floor, and so they know exactly who they need to talk to or send people to talk to in order to see their way on the issue.
So is the Real ID like just an extra security, basically for the people, or just so the government can have like tabs on who can fly so and so and over, place to place?
I don't know if it's security, because really what Real ID does nationally is confirm who is in the United States legally and who is not. And I'm not going to say that the people that are here not legally are more of a security risk. So I'm not going to connect those two concepts, but the absolute intent is to know who's here legally and who's not. That is different from who is a citizen, because there are a lot of people here in this country legally who are not citizens. They have green cards, they have work visas, they have student visas, and other things.
How's your day going so far?
You know, I've had a great day. I started out at 8 a.m. talking to the lead budget writer in the Senate. So the person that's in charge of the entire budget coming out of the Senate. I met with him on a couple different bills. I worked through some amendments with him, and I'm now writing some amendments with staff on his behalf. And if he is writing the amendments, you know that they're going to go someplace. The second bill that I talked to him this morning about, I saved because it was a bill that he was not going to vote out of committee. So he was going to let it die in the fiscal committee in the Senate. And I proposed an alternative to that bill, an amendment that he liked. So we are drafting that amendment, and now that bill will get voted out of committee.
I wasn't even up that early.
Yeah, you work long, long hours as a lobbyist. You work, there's often evening receptions and other things. So I know we've talked about what a lobbyist is, but a lobbyist really, their job is to create relationships. So I'm going to be really tired next Friday morning, and I think we're connecting again because there is karaoke starting at 9 p.m. on Thursday night, and it's a couple different legislators that are sponsoring it. So you know I'll be there. And that's just kind of a way to socially interact with people, but that's something that a lobbyist does. So that starts at 9. I don't know when it ends, and I'll be here Friday morning at 8 a.m.
We got a party on Saturdays.
I am working tomorrow morning as well because the fiscal committee in the House Appropriations starts their committee meeting at 9. And it's important to be at the meetings if there are amendments or votes, or if the legislators have any questions. If they see you there, they'll text you. You can pull them aside and sometimes save or further your issue. So I'm working tomorrow. There's no overtime. Yes, question.
Side note, so do you get paid a lot being a lobbyist?
Lobbyists' pay varies greatly. We talked about this, the first connection. There's 2 types of pay. One is session only, where you are only paid when the legislators are here, and then the rest of the year you literally have no income. And then sometimes there's clients that will pay you year-round, so that when the legislators aren't here, you're setting up policy for the following year. So it just depends on how many clients you're able to have.
All right. I think I remember now.
One of the things that was on a suggested list to talk about this connection is the PDC, or the Public Disclosure Commission. And that makes transparent what lobbyists do so that the public can understand if there's any undue influence. So it controls, you have to report, if you take a legislator out to dinner, you have to report how much that cost. Legislators are only allowed to go to 12 dinners a year, so basically 1 a month with a lobbyist. If the lobbyist is paying, they can go to dinner as much as they want as long as they pay for themselves. And then we also have to report any donations to political campaigns or anything else, so that that legislator can look you up and know who you donate to and how much money you spend, and who you entertain, so that they, kind of understand where your advocacy is. And so the public understands as well. Do you have any questions about how lobbyists can spend money, or how legislators? Yes.
What kind of car do you drive?
Good. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
What kind of car do you drive?
What kind of car? Toyota Camry.
Hey.
Gas efficient.
Yes.
What are some of the perks you get from your job?
We're talking about experiences to develop relationships. So I don't see this as a perk, but I have gone golfing and it's been paid for me, but I'm not a good golfer, so it's more torture, but somebody might see that as a perk. I've done archery with the previous Lieutenant Governor, Brad Owen. So there are kind of, experiential things that bring lobbyists and legislators together in order to work in a bipartisan way. And so some of those things, conferences or whatever, would be considered a perk of the job.
Have you heard of lobbyists or legislators who refuse to work with each other because of who they supported in the past or who they gave money to or donated to?
Absolutely. And it's not always personal. Sometimes people get their feelings hurt and it's personal, but often it's a political strategy. So one political strategy is if there's a bill in the Senate that goes over to the House and the House refuses to have a hearing on it or refuses to have a vote on it, the Senate will kill all the bills that are coming over from the House. So they literally won't do anything with any bill until the House concedes and listens to that bill that came over from the Senate. So in those kinds of political strategies, it has nothing to do with the value of the concept or the policy. It's literally just caught up in politics. So bills die like that. People lock up, or, you know, I would be lucky if one of my issues, because, for example, in the House, there's only 2 more Democrats than Republicans. So there's 50 Democrats and there's 48 Republicans. So that's a very narrow margin. So if I have an issue or a bill or a funding amount that I want, and I can convince a Democrat not to vote with their party unless they do whatever it is that we want, and they withhold their vote on other things until they get that thing, then that's a strategy as well. So that often happens with the big budget at the end. And that's why you end up with random little projects in the big budget, because legislators say, I won't vote for the whole thing unless you give me my one little thing. And again, that has nothing to do with the policy. It's just the politics of making sure they're taking care of their districts. In the Senate, there's literally one Democrat who votes with the Republicans. So the Republicans have the theoretical majority because they've convinced a Democrat to vote with them all the time. That Democrat is Tim Sheldon from the 35th district, which is Shelton, Bremerton, out there. And because he is the reason they win their votes, because on the very important things, they all vote together in a block. Because he does that, they owe him. And when they owe him, then he gets special things for his district. So an example, the president, you guys went into the Senate chambers, right? And there's, I don't know if they were in session, but there's a person that stands up in the front and runs the Senate. Well, he is a president pro tempore. He's the one that stands in when the lieutenant governor is not there. So that's a very prestigious position. It's given to him because he's willing to vote with the Republicans. So next election, that power may shift in the Senate. They only have to pick up one Democrat seat, and then the Democrats are in charge, not the Republicans in the Senate. So that's an example of how people sometimes side with things that seem unrelated. You want me to give you one more example of an amendment in the Senate? Just happened last week. So a lobbyist had 2 bills that were going nowhere. One bill allows you to drink alcohol, more alcohol in movie theaters. He represents AMC. So they already can, but it's expanding the amount. Another bill that he had was a 24/7 drunk driving security bill, which also went nowhere. So in the regular policy committee, 2 different clients, completely separate issues. Didn't go anywhere. So when the budget got to the floor in the Senate, he combined them in an amendment. And what he said was, the theaters will pay a fee for the right to offer alcohol. And that fee will go to the 24/7 drunk driving program. And so you had legislators standing up that said literally, I don't like the underlying bill. That's drinking in movie theaters. However, please support this because the money goes to 24/7. And then you had other ones standing up and saying, I don't care about 24/7, but my district, my theater, my constituents want to, have this economic opportunity for their theaters. So please vote for it. So suddenly, whereas two bills by themselves didn't have the support, when you combined it, there was enough support and it passed off the Senate floor.
So if, let's say, what was the guy's name that was Democrat that was voting with the Republicans?
Tim Sheldon.
Tim Sheldon. So, I mean, he's doing it really to get stuff for his own district, correct?
Yes, and it's risky because if you get elected as a Democrat and then all of a sudden you go down to Olympia and you start being a Republican, essentially, will you get reelected? But if you look at his district is part of Hood Canal, the south part of Hood Canal, Shelton, Bremerton, a lot of forest land, not very populated, and so not very wealthy, not a lot of industry. And so they do have some of those very conservative values. So in his district, it works. But most of the time, if you got elected as a Democrat, started voting as a Republican, you would be one term and out. The voters wouldn't vote you back in. But because of the makeup of his district, he's been able to do that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering. And also, like, do the Democratic Party in general, when he's running for re-election, aren't they a big part of helping him do that? So when they kind of feel a little,
There's more than a little. I mean, he's not loved in the Democratic caucus, that's for sure. However, the system that we have in Washington state, you don't have necessarily one Democrat and one Republican that make it to the final vote in November. It's the top two candidates. So often there's two Republicans running against each other or two Democrats running against each other. And in that case, if the Democratic Party wanted to unseat Tim Sheldon, they could give to another Democrat. So they wouldn't be crossing over. When there are districts that are very Republican or very Democrat, and then that's how you kind of weed them out, is you pick the Democrat that's more liberal or the Republican that's more conservative, and your party supports that candidate.
So, what's the name of the session?
What's the name of the I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing.
when does the session end?
Oh, when does it end? Oh, that's an excellent question. Okay, so this Tuesday is the fiscal cutoff. Things have to get out of the fiscal committee. And then the 12th, April 12th, is when things have to get off the floor. And then after that, it's just kind of a negotiation period about the end game, the grand bargain, the final deal. April 23rd is the last day of this regular session. It's a 105-day session, and it ends on April 23rd. However, there's not much hope that we will have a solution to McCleary and some of these other big issues by April 23rd. So on April 23rd at midnight, the governor can call a special session to finish the work. The governor can choose. He can choose to give them a week off and then call them back, or he can choose to call them back the next morning at 8 a.m. and say, you're going to continue being here. Special sessions last 30 days each, and you can have a special session. That's the one thing the governor can do. The governor can't tell them what to pass in the legislature and put it on his desk to sign, but he can keep them here or call them back here. So he will most likely have to do that. Now they want to go home. And one of the reasons they want to go home is the 45th District, Andy Hill, that's up there kind of by Redmond area outside of Seattle, passed away. And he was the budget writer. He was the big wig in the Senate, and he died. And so Dino Rossi was appointed. They put someone in that position, but they're going to have to run in November. And remember, in the Senate, there's only one more person in the majority for the Republicans than the Democrats. And that's really a Democrat district. So both parties in the Senate are fighting for the majority. And their large focus is going to be on dumping a lot of money into that race and assuring that their candidate wins. They can't collect campaign funds if they're in the legislature while they're in session. So they can't be running or campaigning while they're in session. So they want the session to end so that they can go out and campaign for the 45th district for next year.
If it was a shorter session, when would it end? Just
It's
curious.
60 days. Except that in the short sessions, in the years that I've been down here, we've had special sessions too. Because in a short session, you make adjustments to the budget, or like last year, it was charter schools. And charter schools was a big, hot topic that kept people here for a very long time. Actually, the governor, so the laws pass the House and the Senate, and then they go to the governor's desk to sign. The governor has some choices. He can sign the legislation as it is. He can veto parts of it. He can cross out parts. He can say, I like this part, I don't like this part. Or he can veto the entire thing, or he can not sign it at all. And if he doesn't sign it at all, after 3 weeks, it just automatically goes into law. So that happened last year with the charter schools bill because he didn't want to sign it, but he didn't want that to be the issue when we wanted to talk about McCleary funding. So he just let it go into law. But last year, one of the ways that he kept legislators on topic of funding was he vetoed every bill that came to his desk. And so he vetoed more bills than have ever been vetoed in the history of governors of Washington state. And they were good bills. They were bills that his agency asked for. They were bills about affordability of higher ed and special needs students getting accommodations in school, and some of these other things that were near and dear to his heart, and he vetoed all of them. And when you veto a bill, it has to go back to the legislature and be repassed with 2/3 vote in both chambers before it can be brought back to life. So he was making a stand and saying, you are not doing the job you need to do. You're playing a game of chicken. You're staring each other down, and you're not coming up with solutions. I'm going to make your lives miserable. And he did. And after he did that, they repassed most of the bills, but they also got to work and finished the job. However, it took more than the 60 days.
How much do you report your activity, and who do you report your activity to?
Gil, I'm sorry, I can't hear your questions today. So something about reporting activity?
Yes, how much do you report your activity, and who do you report it to?
So as far as what I do, I talk to my clients and I say, what do you want to accomplish? They tell me what they want me to accomplish, and then I just do it. I don't tell them all of the little strategies of what it is. For example, this week on Monday, the House came out with their education budget. They cut $400,000 from a program that helps career technical education that I have a client for. So the Senate kept it, the House cut it. So then it's my job to figure out how can I get the House to put that $400,000 back in the budget. So I called Boeing because Boeing cares about this program because they're hiring kids straight out of high school that have these skills from this program. And I also know that the House is democratically controlled, so they like labor. They like the labor groups. And so I called all of my labor friends and I said, please meet with Speaker Chop and tell him how important this is for the workforce and for the skills gap and to get people in the pipeline interested in the jobs you provide through your apprenticeships. So now I'm sending labor. Washington Building Trades talked to Speaker Chop yesterday to him because he's in charge of the budget and the House ultimately to advocate for putting that funding back in. But I don't need to tell my client that. I just need to know what they need, what they want, and then I figure out with my relationships and strategy how to do it. I do have to report my income to the Public Disclosure Commission online. I have to report if I entertain for dinner or if I contribute, those kinds of reporting. But to my clients, it's just phone calls most of the time because I'm here every day. Many of my clients are located in Seattle or other places. So I just touch bases with them to ask them, to inform them about changes in policy and ask them, you know, what they need. And then I go do it however it gets done. Yes.
You want to call Boeing and help me get a job there?
So you need to go to a Core Plus program, and you could have started as a junior, and then you can do it in technical college too, but they hired 156 kids, seniors, out of, like, in Bethel, there's right outside Bethel School District, which isn't very far from you guys, and the Pierce County Skills Center. They hired 156 kids last year. They want to hire 750 high school seniors a year. And these are living wage jobs. But you have to have that, you know, machinery kind of experience. It's not too late. It's not too late. You get whatever appropriate communication. I can get you in touch with people, but you need some skills. It's not a 4-year degree, though. It's like a 1-year tech degree if you are graduating. And then they will hire you and they will pay for any continuing education that you desire or need.
They make so much money.
A lot of that stuff, you think about a year for a technical program to get a job, that then that job will pay for the rest of your education.
And
And it's not a dead-end job. So Ray Connor, who's now in control of all the manufacturing for airplanes, started on the shop floor sweeping the shop floor. And he worked his way up through the Boeing company just by being there. And you wouldn't start sweeping. You'd start by making airplane parts.
I might just open the deal.
Yeah.
So we have just a couple minutes left. Do you have any questions of Elizabeth, any questions of Tony, any questions of the bill, or is there something specific that you'd like to talk to me about next time so that I can prepare that? Because it's actually next Friday that we are connecting again.
I think we'll have more questions next Friday.
No questions?
Can I get some contacts?
Some contacts?
I was discussing it earlier.
Are there any special people that you'd like me to bring on to connect in our next couple of connections? Anybody else that you'd like to hear from?
President Trump.
I don't think President Trump's gonna come, guys, sorry.
And that's the difference here between Washington State and the big Washington. We're Washington State.
We are the big Washington.
That's where the show.
Oh,
Someone from a representative from Boeing? That's,
Yeah, I talked to them.
are they coming to Franklin Pierce?
Yeah.
Oh,
The engineering program.
cool. Apparently Boeing's gonna come here for the engineering program and talk with us.
Great. I'd love to know the name of the person. I know several and work with several inside that company for Core Plus and career technical education.
Do you know Bristol Track?
I'm dropping out and going to Boeing.
I wouldn't say that's dropping out, going to Boeing. I'd say that that's a great career move.
So I would suggest doing it after you graduate. But that's just
Says the high school teacher. That's good.
especially when they have 48 days left.
Yeah.
42 days left?
Yeah.
Why don't we cross those off?
Yeah, let's get out of here. I'm trying to
All
graduate.
right. See you next time.
Thanks, Jenna. Let's talk and figure out what we can talk about tomorrow, Friday.
Got it.
Okay. Everybody wave.
Bye, Jenna.